Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1248 of the Juicebox Podcast. Well, here's one for you. Stacy's 55 years old. She was diagnosed when she was 10. She spent 3 days in a coma from her blood sugar at diagnosis. Her father was an alcoholic. Her mother was bipolar. She found out she was adopted later in life. She got into a car accident while she was pregnant with her son. This story has a little bit of everything. Please don't forget that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. CozyEarth.com. Use the offer code Juicebox at checkout. Save 30% off of your entire cart. Those are the towels, the sheets, the clothes, anything you can find at CozyEarth.com. You'll save 30% with the offer code Juicebox at checkout. Links in the show notes. Links at JuiceboxPodcast.com. When you place your first order for AG1 with my link, you'll get 5 free travel packs and a free year's supply of vitamin D. Drink AG1.com/Juicebox. Don't forget, for community, you want the Juicebox Podcast Facebook group. It's called Juicebox Podcast Type 1 Diabetes. There are currently 51,000 members. It grows by 150 every 3 days. Go over there and check it out. Today's episode is sponsored by Medtronic Diabetes, a company that's bringing people together to redefine what it means to live with diabetes. Later in this episode, I'll be speaking with Jalen. He was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at 14. He's 29 now. He's going to tell you a little bit about his story. To hear more stories with Medtronic Champions, go to medtronicdiabetes.com/juicebox or search the hashtag Medtronic Champion on your favorite social media platform. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Dexcom. Dexcom.com/Juicebox. Get the brand new Dexcom G7 with my link and get started today.
So my name's Stacy, and I was actually diagnosed with type 1 diabetes exactly 45 years ago yesterday.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
December 27th. Hold on a second. You want to see if I can figure out what 45 years ago was?
Sure.
This shouldn't be hard, right?
Shouldn't be.
Because it's the end of 2023. So we're working with a pretty clean number here. So we use 2024. We take 24 off. That takes you to 2000, right? Then we take 20 more off. That takes you to 80. Now I'm up to 44. 79?
I believe it's 1978.
God, we're so close. All right. So I should have started with 2023, not 2024. Yeah, that was my mistake.
Yes.
That's not my fault.
Yep.
I was educated poorly. Okay, so December 27th. And by the way, yes, I'm working a couple of days after Christmas. That's fine. By the way, most people are like, yeah, asshole. So are we. Podcast guy doesn't think we work after Christmas. No, I know.
Right.
So 45 years, my goodness. How old were you?
I was 10.
Wow. Okay. Well, gosh. I bet you that was a surprise, huh?
Yeah, it was a surprise. I was a really sick little kid. Looking back on it, I can see it happening for a long time. Getting up in the middle of the night, 3-4 times to go to the bathroom. I would cup my hands underneath the faucet and let water run into my hands and stick my face into that little pool of water in my hands and just suck it out like a straw. I was so thirsty. And Christmas came and my sister was home for Christmas. She was 12 years older and lived on the other side of the state. And I wanted to go back with her so badly to spend some time with her, which I often did as a kid. Mm-hmm. And it was a 3-hour drive. And it was Christmas Eve or Christmas Day when we took the drive, and my parents were like, man, she's not feeling so good. She doesn't look so good. And I'm like, I'll be fine. I want to go so bad. So they let me go. And I remember, it was dark out. Everything was closed. I had to go to the bathroom so bad. We stopped. I remember stopping once at a police station along the way because there were people there and I could use the bathroom. And then another stop at, I think it was like an assisted living place. And then we made another stop at her aunt's house. And then we finally got to her house. They thought I had the flu. So, of course, I'm drinking orange juice. She had to work during the day. And so her roommate would come home and I wanted a 7-Eleven Slurpee so bad. So she'd take me down to 7-Eleven and I'd get a Slurpee. My parents called one night to see how I was doing. And I remember they put me on the phone and I could hardly talk. I was so sick. I remember just being so tired and weak. They said to my sister, get her to the emergency room. So we went to the emergency room. I remember her carrying me into the hospital. And then I went into a coma. I remember going into the room. They walked in and they knew right away I had type 1. I passed out and I was in a coma for 3 days.
Oh my gosh.
I had a blood sugar of 1,280.
Woo. Can I ask you, Stacy, you said you were a sick little kid. Did you mean in that moment or for your whole life?
No, in that moment.
In that moment. Okay.
Yeah. I think I had been sick for a while, looking back on it, looking at pictures. I just remember being really thirsty all the time and peeing all the time. And I think that was going on for a while.
Yeah. Younger people have to appreciate that in 1978, if they thought you had the flu, you got orange juice and that was it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Orange juice and ginger ale.
Is her stomach upset? Give her ginger ale. Ginger ale and orange juice. See, you people, you complain about life, but I was alive back then. When you had, I got the, what I have the one time, bronchitis. Can you imagine bronchitis? Do you know how I got through bronchitis? I sat on the sofa and watched television.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that was it. I was in immense pain. I could not breathe. Horrible, fevers in and out, passing out for hours at a time, waking back up. I got ginger ale, orange juice, and television. There's no medicine. No one took you to a doctor. No, they were like, I wonder if this one will live. Let's find out.
Oh, gosh.
Your parents are like, by the way, also 1978. This isn't in your Toyota Camry. This is some rust bucket with air blowing through the doors and you can't hear a damn thing when you're on the highway because it's so loud in the car. And you're lucky if the thing stops when you step on the brake. It's a car from the 70s. You guys don't even know. God damn, Stacy, you're lucky to be alive.
No, I know.
Yeah, no, you really are lucky to be alive. So you were in a coma for 3 days?
Yeah.
Get out of here. Oh my gosh.
I remember coming to and hearing voices all around me. My parents were there. And all of a sudden, I was laying there, my eyes closed. And I'm like, I smell dill pickles.
Dexcom G7 offers an easier way to manage diabetes without finger sticks. It is a simple CGM system that delivers real-time glucose numbers to your smartphone, your smartwatch, and it effortlessly allows you to see your glucose levels and where they're headed. My daughter is wearing a Dexcom G7 right now, and I can't recommend it enough. Whether you have commercial insurance, Medicare coverage, or no CGM coverage at all, Dexcom can help you. Go to my link, dexcom.com/juicebox, and look for that button that says Get a Free Benefits Check. That'll get you going with Dexcom. When you're there, check out the Dexcom Clarity app or the Follow. Did you know that people can follow your Dexcom? Up to 10 people can follow you. Right now, I'm following my daughter, but my wife is also following her. Her roommates at school are following her. So I guess Arden's being followed right now by 5 people who are concerned for her health and welfare. And you can do the same thing. School nurses, your neighbor, people in your family, everyone can have access to that information if you want them to have it. Or if you're an adult and you don't want anyone to know, you don't have to share with anybody. It's completely up to you. Dexcom.com/juicebox. Links in the show notes. Links at juiceboxpodcast.com. And when you use my link to learn about Dexcom, you're supporting the podcast. This episode is sponsored by Medtronic Diabetes. MedtronicDiabetes.com/juicebox. And now we're going to hear from Medtronic champion, Jalen.
I was going straight into high school, so it was a summer heading into high school.
Was that particularly difficult?
unimaginable. I missed my entire summer. So I was going to a brand new school. I was around a bunch of new people that I had not been going to school with. So it was hard trying to balance that while also explaining to people what type 1 diabetes was. My hometown did not have an endocrinologist. So I was traveling over an hour to the nearest endocrinologist for children. So, outside of that, I didn't have any type of support in my hometown.
Did you try to explain to people, or did you find it easier just to stay private?
I just held back. I didn't really like talking about it. It felt like it was just a repeating record where I was saying things and people weren't understanding it. And I also was still in the process of learning it. So I just kept it to myself, didn't really talk about it.
Did you eventually find people in real life that you could confide in?
I never really got the experience until after getting to college. And then once I graduated college, it's all I see. You can easily search Medtronic Champions. You see people that pop up and you're like, wow, look at all this content. And I think that's something that motivates me. I started embracing more, how I live with type 1 diabetes.
MedtronicDiabetes.com/juicebox to hear more stories from the Medtronic Champion community.
And I heard my mom's voice. I'm like, Mom, have you been eating dill pickles? I want a dill pickle so bad.
Wait, was she eating a pickle?
Well, they had been to lunch and she had a dill pickle and I could smell it on her breath. And I wanted a dill pickle so bad. Everybody was so excited. I was awake. Yeah,
no kidding. 3 days. They definitely thought, they were like, how are we going to get the orange juice in her when she's sleeping? By the way, Stacy, really quickly, let's go back to the dill pickle in a second. But do you think people listening heard air blowing through the doors of a car and thought, that's not true?
Oh, gosh. Well, yeah, probably.
Yeah. It is true. By the way, for those of you listening, they didn't seal that well. And air, like cold air, like in the middle of the winter, you'd have to wear your jacket in the damn car. The heating barely worked. Air conditioning.
I think my sister brought me across the state in a Nova.
Oh,
it was exactly that. You could hear the air and it was freezing in there.
Yeah, you can hear the air blowing through. It's freezing cold. The defroster doesn't work. The brakes are for crap. There's no, power steering sometimes in cars. People are like cranking on the wheel to make it turn. And above all that, the motor is going like this the entire time you're driving.
And vinyl seats.
Yeah, but don't worry because the radio works once in a great while. You all complain. You're a joke. I'll tell you right now. By the way, and go back 50 years before me, and that Nova looks like a leather sofa. My God, no one knows. Anyway, this is not the point. The point is dill pickle saved your life. That's what I'm hearing.
Oh, I'm pretty sure that's it. And I've been obsessed with them ever since. So
yeah, you've had your fair share of dill pickles.
Oh yes.
Did they go get you some?
I don't remember that. I'm sure eventually they did.
Yeah. No, I know. Oh, that's amazing. You just kind of popped open asking for pickles, huh?
Yes.
And no deficits, nothing, right?
No.
Wow. It's just dumb luck.
Nothing.
That's really dumb luck. Because if you hadn't gone with your sister, your parents would have figured it out sooner, I imagine.
If I hadn't gone with my sister, they said I would have died within an hour.
Oh, wait, when you went to the emergency room?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, you were on your way.
Yeah.
For sure. Because you probably used the last little bit of will you had to make it to the hospital. And then you pass out when you get there.
Yeah.
My gosh. Boy, that's crazy. Do you remember how long you were in the hospital after that?
2 weeks.
Jeez.
I was in the hospital on one side of the state, and I lived with my parents on the other side of the state. So I was in that hospital until after the new year. And then they transported me to the hospital in my hometown. I was there for quite a while, too, just trying to get regulated and teach me what I needed to know. They wouldn't let me leave the hospital until I gave my own shot.
Yeah, isn't that something? That was what you needed to know back then.
Oh, yeah. It was so important.
Can you get this needle in? You can? You're good. Gosh, what insulin do you recall?
It was the beef and pork insulin. It was 2 different kinds. I mixed them in one syringe. And the syringes, Oh my gosh, the needles were ginormous and they had visible burrs on them.
Yeah, they tear through your skin, right?
Oh God, they were awful.
Burrs. Now, so tell people, did you have like a sharpening stone that you used to have to sharpen the needles with?
No stone. Just had to stick the burrs right in.
I think.
And I swear the needles were an inch long. They were big.
Do you recall it? Like the discomfort from it? Do you recall it still or no?
Yes.
You do.
Well, and not only that, so once I was discharged from the hospital, my dad had to take me to the hospital every single morning for a couple of weeks to get a fasting blood draw, because there was no other way to tell what my blood sugar was running. So every morning we would go to the hospital and I'd get a blood draw. And at that point, after spending 2 weeks in the hospital and then another 2 weeks getting poked every morning, there was nothing left. Like my arms, I remember my arms were black and blue. My hands were black and blue. It was pretty traumatic. And after that, and to this day, I have a tremendous fear of needles.
Yeah, I bet you do. How do you manage today?
I use a little self-hypnosis. I go to the same lab every single time to get my blood drawn because I'm familiar with the environment and the people there are really good at doing it. I made a mistake once of going to a different lab. There was this newbie drawing blood. She hit a nerve in my arm and I got the tunnel vision. I was throwing up, passing out. It was a terrible experience.
Like a panic attack.
Yeah, I knew it was coming. Like she hit the nerve and, I was a little nervous anyway. And I said, I freaked out and I said, get it out. You hit a nerve. And I sat there and I was trying to relax and do the deep breathing. And then all of a sudden tunnel vision started. And I'm like, well, here it goes. I knew this was going to happen.
Do you have to look at the needle or do you have to look away from it?
Oh, I can't look at it.
No. Arden stares at it.
Oh,
like I was going to say like a mental patient, but I don't think that's the thing we can say anymore. But she stares at it like a mental patient. She stares and stares and stares and stares. And I'm like, Arden, why don't you look away? She goes, I need to see it happen. I'm like, what?
Oh my God.
And she hates it too.
I can't even watch a movie that has sharp objects in it.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, I mean, you spend enough time being stabbed by the way, do you think people know what a burr is? Like the needles would tear a little bit and then they get these little bumps of metal on them. And a lot of people that I talked to from back then, sorry, Stacy, but back then, like they would talk about like a whetstone where they'd sharpen their own needles, but it sounds like they were just like, you'll be fine. Just shove that in there. So, and you're not fine. You have Arden's taking Ozempic right now, like really low doses of it. She's only been doing it for a couple of weeks and we've been seeing about, by the way, it's cut her insulin use significantly.
Oh, wow.
But she's getting like 1/4 of a milligram in, from a pen. And my God, she's like, Dad, I'm allergic to needles. And I'm like, what? And she goes, it hurts. And I was like, and I don't disbelieve her, by the way, because she's a pretty tough kid about a lot of stuff. And she's like, I hate getting poked like that. And I mean, you guys know at this point, like it's an insulin pen. It's not a very big needle. And boy, she's like, oh, it hurts afterwards for a while. And like, interesting, but yeah, she not a fan. And she was doing okay for the first number of like years actually with diabetes. But I will never forget the time in the office they came in to give her a blood draw. And she was little. They didn't take her to the phlebotomist room at the end, or they used to do it right there because it's kind of friendlier in the room and everything. And one day after years of it being okay, she just recoiled into a corner and I thought she was going to climb right to the ceiling to get away from them. And she has not been okay with them since then. So yeah, something actually. All right. So I feel for you because I've seen it. You're not MDI though now. No. Okay.
Interesting. My parents were told I wasn't going to make it out of my 20s.
Oh, really?
I can't even imagine, being a parent and having them say that. when I was growing up, we never talked about diabetes. We never talked about my care. We just lived life. I took my shots, and my mom was a really good cook. She would cook a really good dinner every night, but I just took my shot, ate my breakfast, went out to play, came home for dinner, and that was that. We never talked about it. And I think they just wanted me to live the most normal life that they thought I could live. And it just was never discussed.
Because they thought you were going to die.
I believe so. I think that was the reasoning behind it.
Like, if this is what's going to happen to her, then we'll just make it as good as it can be.
Yeah, we want to give her the best life she can live, and we're not going to live under this stress.
Are they alive still?
No, my dad passed away when I was 23, and my mom passed away 4 years ago.
Oh, wow. Did your dad have a heart attack?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, he had several heart attacks, and then what finally took him was a stroke.
And I'm not a soothsayer. It's just that time, men, it's about what would happen if you died early. You'd have a ton of...
He smoked, 2 or 3 packs of cigarettes a day, and he had chronic alcoholism.
I will, I'll tell you what, I might be an alcoholic if you told me my kid was going to die in their 20s.
Yeah.
My father used to smoke 3 packs of cigarettes a day too. So, I mean, it was just like nonstop. It was one after another. I've seen my dad.
Yeah.
I've seen my dad smoke in the shower.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, not uncommon. Anyway, next time you're like, nobody should tell me what to do. I don't need to be told that vape pens aren't good for me. Yeah, apparently we do need people to tell us sometimes what's okay. Because when no one was telling you it was bad, my father was smoking in the shower. Please wrap your head around that for a second. He was up, lighting a cigarette at the side of the bed, had it done before he got in the shower, lit another one while he was in there because he couldn't be away from it too long, was smoking while he was eating. While he was eating, I can't believe I'm alive. Actually, him leaving my mom might have saved my life and my brother's, to be perfectly honest, because the house
from
was
secondhand smoke.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
And my mom did die of cancer eventually. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I still might not be out of this. Different time for sure. Also, they were probably like, if she's not going to live much longer, let's not spend money on extra needles.
Right.
Well, how did you
reuse those bird needles?
Yeah, I mean, listen, we love her and all, but times are tight and booze isn't cheap. Other brothers and sisters?
Yes, I have. Let me figure this out. I have 2 half brothers and 3 half sisters.
Okay. 2 half brothers, 3 half sisters. Do any of them have any autoimmune issues?
On my mother's side, so my grandfather, my mother, and my sister all have or had lupus. My sister was recently diagnosed with Sjogren's.
Yeah.
On my dad's side, I have a sister with MS and aunts with rheumatoid arthritis.
You do. And you're up in that like Viking part of the country, right?
Viking part.
Yeah, like aren't you Wisconsin-y, Michigan-y, like in that space up there?
Michigan.
Yeah. Isn't that where the Vikings landed? Something like that?
Yeah, probably.
Look into it.
Somewhere in those lakes.
Yeah, well, they wanted the water. They liked the water. They got inland. They were like, where's the water? We used to have those boats with the big things in the front, and now there's no water. So they probably went to a lake. That's what I'm getting at. But a lot of like European background?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. But you're the only type 1. Tell me about your A1Cs growing up and how they went.
Okay. So I don't remember there even being A1Cs until I was maybe late high school, definitely in college. I remember A1Cs being discussed. Again, it was a fasting blood draw in the morning, and that's how they made treatment decisions.
Mm-hmm.
If I was blood sugar was high, then the doctor would up my insulin. I was expected to bring in numbers in a booklet, like I know a lot of people had to do, but I fibbed the numbers all the time. I didn't want to disappoint anybody, and I didn't want to look like I was failing. And at the same time, didn't know how to take care of myself. I don't think my parents knew how to really follow. We didn't count carbs or anything like that.
Right.
So they just fed me good food, and I took my shots, and that was it. I was extremely, and still am, athletic, into all the sports, a lot of activities. And I think that's what's saved me all my life. I've been very active. I don't sit still much. The funny thing, I was thinking about this the other day, looking back on my whole life, I never experienced a low blood sugar.
Ever?
Up until into my late 20s.
Because your blood sugar was always high?
Yeah.
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 How high do you think it was most of the time? I'm a big fan of starting every day the same way. That's why I enjoy my morning routine that includes AG1. I put my trust into AG1 because, unlike so many products, their entire formula is backed by research studies. AG1 has been third-party tested for safety for years, and it is trusted by experts and medical professionals, giving you one less thing to research on your own. In one study, at the 30-day mark, 80% of people in this study noticed less gas and bloating. How about that? And 97% of people in that same research study felt more energy. At 60 days, 82% of people in a research study feel less stressed. We could all use with that. Are you kidding me? Less stress, fewer farts? AG1, baby. If there's one product I trust to support my whole body health and to keep me from farting, it's AG1. And that's why I've partnered with them for so long. This episode of the podcast is sponsored by AG1, and it's easy and satisfying to start your journey with them today. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3, K2, and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase at drinkag1.com/juicebox. That's drinkag1.com/juicebox. Check it out.
Well, when they started doing the A1Cs, I was 14, 15, pretty consistently.
All right.
And I would go to the doctor. Now, this was back in college. I'd go to the doctor, and the doctor would say, you got to do better. And, you've got this A1C of 14, and that's not good. And you got to do better. And I'm like, okay, whatever. I wasn't given the tools or the resources when I was younger, and neither were my parents. And we just kind of ignored it.
Mm-hmm. Do you think they ever looked at you and were like, oh my God, she's still alive? We'd not think we were going to have to send her to college? Or...
Like I said, my dad had a problem with alcohol. My mother had an untreated mental illness. It was a very stressful environment. I think the two of them were very protective of me. They loved and adored me. They were great people, but there were certainly a lot of issues. And I found myself, as I was getting a little bit older, kind of becoming the parent. Mm-hmm. When I went off to college, I couldn't wait to go off to college because I needed to get out of that environment.
What did your mom have that wasn't being helped?
I believe she had bipolar, but she had a lot of auditory hallucinations and little delusions of grandeur. And my dad felt like he couldn't do anything about it because she was extremely opinionated, and she would make your life hell if you tried to tell her that she needed some help. To her, she was fine.
Okay. Yeah, that's a lot to deal with for sure. So A1Cs, 14s in college. How long did that continue for?
Let me think. When I got out of college, I went to work. I got married right away. I got pregnant, and that's when, the doctor said, "Oh, we really got to get a control on this." So I started checking my sugar with a glucometer, which I had never done, and taking more injections. I was taking, 2 to 3 shots a day.
Mm-hmm. How old are you when you were pregnant?
I was 22. And then I had my first child when I was 23. And then I had my second when I was 24. So my kids are 12 and a half months apart.
Stacy got pregnant before got married, or got married, then got pregnant?
Got married and then got pregnant.
Okay. And so that's like 88. It's like 1990-ish, around there.
My daughter was born in 90.
Okay.
No, my daughter was born in 92.
92. But you got married around 90.
I got married in 91.
91. Okay. And right out of college. So was this, are you still married?
To somebody different.
Were you like, I will marry the first person who makes it, I don't have to go back home with those two?
Kind of, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So married a college sweetheart?
No, I married an older man that I met where I was working. And, that's a whole story in itself. Let me tell you, Scott. I mean, we don't want to go down a rabbit hole because.
But what'd you see? Like security money? Like security money, a guy who wasn't drunk, like that kind of stuff?
He was narcissistic, manipulative, made everything look just wonderful on the outside and at the beginning. I became pretty codependent, and it was terrible.
Okay. But your child is with him? Both of them?
My 2 children are with him.
Okay. All right. Got it. How long did that last?
That lasted until 97.
Oh.
So the kids were just 3 and 4.
Gotcha. So the doctor says we have to get this better. Speaking about your A1C when you're pregnant, and the answer was take a couple more injections a day, and we're going to start using a meter in the 12 years after you've had diabetes. You started using a meter.
Yes.
Wow, not crazy, isn't it? Now, when you look back at it, do you not see that and think that's insane?
Oh God, yes.
Yeah.
You have no idea how I feel about that.
Yeah. No, just, oh my gosh, how did that happen, right? And why did somebody not tell you sooner?
Oh my word. They just assumed that I knew.
Mm-hmm. Were there not meters, or were there meters and you just didn't have one?
When I was pregnant with my daughter, my first child, my doctor, and he was a PCP, he's like, we got to put you in the hospital. We got to get some better control over this. So he admitted me to the hospital, where I sat in a bed. I felt I wasn't sick.
Mm-hmm.
And you know how it is. Everybody talks about it. You go into the hospital and nurses can't do anything without doctor's orders. Doctor's orders don't come in till like 2 p.m. I'm sitting there. I'm asking for insulin injections. They're not giving them to me because the doctor didn't order it. I need to move because I can't sit still. I like to go on walks and hikes and exercise. And I was confined to this room. And I remember arguing with them, saying, this is making it worse. I need to exercise.
Right.
Anyway, that's where I got my first glucometer.
Okay.
Was in the hospital. Then I discharged myself from the hospital without any support from the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
So I signed papers and I left.
By the way, at that point still, are you using regular and NPH at that point? I'm just guessing because early 90s.
Yeah, I think I was.
Okay. And so they had you injecting a little more insulin to try to bring your blood sugars down somewhat and test a little bit. Still, they're not coming down much, I would imagine, because you still haven't experienced a low blood sugar.
To be honest with you, now that I think back on it, I was in better control. I did experience some low blood sugars while I was pregnant because Oh, that was my second pregnancy. I got into a terrible car accident.
Oh, so not in the first one, but in your second pregnancy, you had a car accident?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's scary. Especially because,
yeah.
So were you in the hospital after the accident?
Yeah. Yes.
And pregnant?
I was 3 months pregnant, and I had my daughter with me, and I passed out at the wheel and flipped the car like 5 or 6 times and ended up in the hospital.
My God. It's almost impossible to roll a car over nowadays. They're engineered so well.
Not in the 90s.
No. And the doors, they keep out air and everything. They're very, very fancy nowadays.
You're right.
Wow, that's insane. So low blood sugar, you passed out.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Yep. And everyone's okay?
My daughter, who was, she was 7 months old. She broke her collarbone, and that's it. I had a concussion and a bunch of bruising, and son, who I was pregnant with, was fine.
Was she in a seat? Did you have a car seat?
Had a car seat, but they didn't make those the way they make them now either. She, oh, this is so scary. I remember it was a very warm September day, and I had the windows all partially rolled down because my blood sugar was low. I was trying to get home. I wasn't thinking right. I had some sugar, like I had taken some, and I thought, I am almost home. I'm going to get there. I'm almost there. I passed out, and I remember flipping through the air and landed in a ditch. And my daughter had flown out of the car seat, out the window, and ended up in a cornfield about, trying to think, 100 feet from the car.
Jeez. And she just broke her collarbone?
She just broke her collarbone.
She's not weird or anything when you talk to her? I'm just kidding. That when you see, there's never a moment when you're like, oh, maybe something more happened in that car accident. Nothing like that.
I can't say that, oh, you're the way you are because I dropped you on your head. You are the way you are because you flew out of the car window.
I flung you into a cornfield. That's why.
Yes.
Jesus, that's insane. My God, that's crazy. Did they wake you up with dill pickles by any chance at the accident scene?
I probably would have come to faster.
I'm just going to say, if they knew that, if they knew to use that as smelling salts for you, then probably everything would have. So I'm sorry, you wake up, your blood sugar's low. Do they know you have diabetes?
Yes, because the volunteer fireman that was the first on the scene, he was who we rented our house from. And he knew that I was type 1.
Oh my gosh. And then so they revive you. Do they have the baby at that point or?
Well, like I remember coming to and, in and out of consciousness. And all I could say was my baby. And he knew I had a baby too. And he's like, the baby's with you? And I'm like, is she not in the car? And then all of a sudden people were, lined up and walking through the cornfields looking for the baby.
Jesus Christ. Do you call her Children of the Corn when she acts up?
That's a good idea. Yeah, I never thought of that.
If I was there, that's what would happen. So it's too late now. I mean, she's probably older. Is. Yeah, she's probably in her 20s now.
No, she is 31.
Wow. Gosh, that's really something. God damn. This is why people come on. Tell these. There's no way you thought you were going to tell that story when you got on the podcast today.
No, I didn't. I had a whole outline of other things.
Yeah. No, don't worry. I don't care about that stuff. Wow, that's incredible. Now, in your note to me, you say that your A1C has now been in the 6s forever. So at what point and what tools did you get that changed all that for you?
After my divorce, I went back to work to where I was previously working, which was a vocational rehab workshop for people with injuries and developmental disabilities. And there was this young man, I believe he was like 22 or 23 years old. he had his leg amputated because he was a type 1 and didn't take care of himself. And all my coworkers were like, oh, you got to talk to this guy. You got to talk to him. You got to knock some sense into him. You got to tell him how to take care of himself. And I just remember thinking, I don't even know how to take care of myself. How can I tell somebody else how to take care of themselves?
Yeah.
At this point, I was maybe 28 years old.
You're probably thinking I should ask him advice about how to get around with one leg, because you're probably closer to him than he is to being you.
Exactly.
And you weren't no great shakes at that point. So is that what scared you?
I was a single parent, and I'm like, I've got to figure this out. The doctor isn't helping me. Yeah, it was a scary thing. I went home and I pulled the glucometer out of the drawer and wiped the dust off of it. And I'm like, here I go. I'm going to see some bad numbers. And I just started poking my finger and making adjustments on my own. I was still exercising all the time, extremely competitive in sports. And I just made it a new challenge for myself. I'm going to get good at this. I started ordering magazines and read them all the time and, learned some new tricks, eating better. And that's what I just did. And over the years, I just continued to do that because I wanted to get good at it and be proud of myself for it. Eventually, on MDI, I was consistently in the low 6s.
Wow.
And I've been probably for the last 5 years, I haven't had an A1C over 5.6.
Good for you. That's amazing. Did you, so that meter was just for pregnancy. The minute you were done having your son, you were like, oh, thank God, and put that thing away.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then right back to it again. Do you have any complications?
0.
Oh, that's crazy.
Not one.
That's even insane. How about how you feel? Like, did you notice yourself feel better eventually?
Well, yeah, that was the thing. Like, I had lived so long with high blood sugars. I had no idea how terrible I felt until I got those sugars down, and I had so much energy. I could think clearly. I think of like back in school when I was in college, I was a good student, but man, it took me a long time to get it. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like I could have done so much better in so many things if I had stable blood sugars. And once I was able to get all of that under control, like I got more motivation for myself. I wanted to take good care of my kids. I saw things just much more clear, and I didn't want to feel crappy anymore. Yeah. Like, I learned, how I felt when I was stable compared to when those sugars were high. I never wanted to go back there. That's how I am now too. Like, I have absolutely no desire to eat poorly. I do once in a while because, boy, everybody does. And I regret it. It's just not worth it to me.
No, I hear you. I had a couple of cookies over Christmas and I put a pound on, and I had that same thought this morning. I was like, I could have just not had those cookies.
Yeah. Was it worth it?
Yeah, it really doesn't, because now I got to get rid of this pound again. And then I'm like, and I'm like, and that's not a thing I was paying attention to until I was paying attention to it. Really?
Sure.
Yeah. So similar for you. So not really so much about like, I got to be here for these kids, but more about like, I want to be proud of myself. I want to like take over. Is that how you felt? Yes.
Yeah. I wanted to have control. I felt like there were so many things leading up to all that I had no control over, thinking about how I was raised and, dealing with my parents' issues. My whole first marriage was very disappointing. I totally lacked any self-control in that relationship. He had total control. Yeah, once I was on my own and I could see all that, I'm like, that's it. I need to get control of my life and do better for myself and feel better. and I want to excel at this.
Yeah. And you used magazines and any information you could find.
Yes, because the internet wasn't really a thing yet.
Yeah, no, it's so interesting, right? Like the internet's not going to help you at some point, doesn't exist. And it made me feel like 25 years from now, someone will be on whatever the equivalent of a podcast is. And they'll be like, I just want to take control. And I started listening to this thing called the Juicebox Podcast. And like, you know, and it'll sound so old to people. Like when you just said magazines,
Right.
they'll be like, oh, people will be like, oh my God, do you remember podcasts? So quaint. Oh, they used to come on your phone. Do you remember phones? Before our brains could talk to each other. Yeah, we used to have these phones in our hand. They were such a relic. Wait, I think there's one in the Smithsonian if you want to go see it still. Oh my God, that's crazy. Oh, good for you. And never turn back. Do you have an eating style that you use? Or do you just kind of eat what you want, but in reasonable measure?
I stay away from processed foods. I have a lowish carb diet. Like I stay very consistent. So, you know, breakfast, it's 15 carbs. Lunch, it's 15 to 20 carbs. Dinner, I won't go over, 22 to 25 carbs. It's just very consistent. If we go out to eat, we only go out to eat like once a month. And we'll go to the same places where I'm comfortable knowing what to, how to dose, because I don't like playing that chasing game. Mm-hmm. I don't want to, eat something and then be chasing the sugars up and down.
Yeah. Well, I think it's fantastic that you made it through all this. And your second marriage went okay? This guy's better?
Oh, gosh. Yeah. We've been together over 25 years. And he's awesome. We have a lot of fun together. We have my kids. Well, my son has 2 boys, so we're grandparents. And my daughter recently got married, and she's got a baby on the way. So
that's how you girls do it, apparently. Quick.
She waited a little
10
longer
years
than
longer. Yeah. I was just teasing. And do you two have children together, or you have the 2 from your first? Just the 2. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, also everyone in your life had set the bar so low that this guy could be a pretty big jerk and you wouldn't even know it.
Oh no, I had pretty high expectations when I met him.
Yeah, I bet you did. I bet you set the bar pretty high. You're like, I'm not doing that again with those people.
Heck yes.
Oh, nice of your mom to hang on so long too.
Right.
Did she ever get help for the bipolar?
No, she didn't. God, my story with my poor mom is another long rabbit hole. No, she was pretty hard to deal with for many years. And at one point, I kind of walked away from the relationship because it just wasn't good for me. It was very stressful.
Sure. Then
maybe about 8 years later, she hadn't seen the kids since they were little, and they were, senior and junior in high school. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, she just loved those kids so much, and she was missing out. And I finally slowly developed a relationship with her again. And at that point, I tried to learn how to see things from her point of view and why she was the way she was. She had a terrible upbringing, mental health issues in her family. I just tried to be more understanding, even though I didn't believe the way she believed or thought the way she thought. I just became more empathetic and sympathetic with her, and she softened up a lot as she got older.
Okay.
And by the end, we had a really good relationship.
Oh, I'm glad. That's lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah, wait for you. It's nice of you to go back and try again, honestly. You did it for your kids, or you did it because you thought about how much your mom missed the kids? What pushed you?
I felt like my mom had pushed everybody out of her life. She had no relationships with anybody. She was pretty much homebound. And she was missing out on her family, on her kids. that she adored. I wanted her to see the kids, and I was proud of my children and how they grew up and, the kind of people they turned into. And I wanted her to see that.
Oh, it's nice. That's really nice. Oh, wow. You've been through it. Seriously.
Oh, you have no idea. I didn't even tell you about the whole adoption thing.
Wait, that's right. Okay, hold on. Let me focus myself. I want to say that when you said you thought your mom might be bipolar, that didn't shock me when you said, because you had said mental health concerns, then went back to perhaps bipolar. When I ask people about other autoimmune stuff in their life, I usually say, how about any bipolar stuff? And a really unbalanced amount of people say, oh yeah, my aunt, my mom, my grandmother was bipolar. Like, I think it's all inflammation somehow.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sense. Yep.
But as everyone's listening, your dad's an alcoholic, your mom's bipolar, and you sound so like not those things. And you could wonder while you're listening the whole time, how is that possible? But here's how it's possible. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. I was the most stable, emotionally stable person in my entire family.
But you were adopted.
But I was adopted.
It was screwy in my head that you were 10 and your sister was 22. And so I thought like late in life baby or something, but late in life adoption?
No, I was adopted as an infant.
Mm-hmm.
My adopted dad had been married before and had 2 kids. And my adopted mother was younger than my dad, didn't have kids, but didn't want to have kids. Like, she was scared to death of childbirth.
Mm-hmm.
So they wanted to adopt a baby. They're best friends. He was a doctor, and he knew this, this woman was coming in to see him for her pregnancy. And she wanted to give her baby up for adoption. And this doctor said, I've got the perfect family for you.
We've got a bipolar lady and a drunken guy. We're going to slide your kid in. It's going to be fine. Welcome to 1978.
Right.
Actually, 1968, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We've got the perfect people. They're upright.
Well, they were, Scott.
Yeah.
I mean, really, they were. Like, my dad, other than the emotional stuff, like, they provided a fantastic home.
Yeah.
We had a good family business. The finances were there. They were very involved in the community. I mean, the issues came a little bit later.
Okay. Well, yeah. Also, I guess you'll never really know their whole story either, without really sitting and talking to them. I don't know how you figure out, like, when you stop and look at like where the zigs and the zags come from. Like, oh, I just wanted to be proud of myself, so I took care of my diabetes. Or I used a meter because a doctor like foisted it on me, but they tried to stick me like those little stories, those moments that reframe things for people. We don't know what they are. It's not till you sit down. You might talk to your mom and find out that she had all kinds of like problems, growing up, and she might have been lucky to be as together as she was.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. And maybe your father started drinking because your mom was bipolar and he loved her so much and he didn't know what to do. Like, I have no idea.
Exactly. Yeah. You got it right there.
Yeah.
It's definitely what happened.
Oh, yeah. I know. Trust me. I've had a lot of these conversations. I know what happens. Actually, it's frustrating sometimes, Stacy, because as I feel like a historian of humanity on some level, and like having had so many conversations with people, you can see the bellwethers and you can see the detours and you can see the stuff that derails people and that what brings them back. And as it's happening in real time, I sit there sometimes listening to people talk in my real life and I think, oh, don't do that. That's like that story where this lady told me that, like, if you just do this instead, you'll get around that and you'll never have to. Oh, they're going to do it, though. Yeah, they're going to do it. And it's fascinating sometimes how repetitive people's stories are.
Interesting.
And I feel like sometimes I can see them and say like, oh, if you just don't do that, you'll avoid this whole thing. And I know that's real because 75 people have said this to me in my life, like while I'm interviewing them, and they don't realize they're doing it because we sit down. It's a little bit of a thing, Stacy, but we sit down and you're like, oh, it's Scott, the guy who's been talking in my ear for a couple of years. I'll tell him about my car accident where my kid flew into the cornfield and my mom's bipolar, which are not things you would tell people normally. So we have this kind of relaxed conversation about things that people don't talk about usually. And anyway, maybe I'm having feelings of grandeur, but I feel like I've heard enough stories and seen enough of the building blocks of stories that you can kind of look at a person's life in motion and go, oh, that's not a thing they should be doing. And I know because that's going to lead to this.
Right.
And that's why I keep asking people about their stories so that other people can listen to them and eventually go, oh, I should be taking care of myself better. Or, like maybe it would behoove me to take 3 days to figure out how fat's impacting my meals. How do you talk them into doing things for themselves that nobody really either knows to do or cares to spend the time on? I mean, I still, every day, somebody says to me, I don't have time to listen to that. And what I think is, oh, okay, well, I know exactly what's going to happen to your health. You don't know because you have that human thing where you think it's not going to happen to me. I'm going to be the one that's okay. Right? Yeah. My dad and your dad did the same thing. 3 packs of cigarettes, no big deal. This won't be a problem at all. My dad died of congestive heart failure eventually. And your father had a heart attack and then a stroke, which is directly relatable to the cigarettes, Sure. While they're doing it, they're like, no, it's fine. I'm fine. Which is what you were doing with your blood sugar. You're like, I'm fine. Until, it's just, anyway, Stacy, I see it. I feel genuinely lucky to be able to have the conversations, to pull these things out of people, to make them available for other people to hear. So maybe they'll have an aha moment and move forward. But, still in my own life, it doesn't always help me. So,
yeah, because when you're talking with other people, you're listening to their story and helping them and helping other people. But when it comes down to looking at yourself, that's hard to do.
Yeah. And who's got the time, honestly?
It's a lot of work.
It is. So I make a podcast that you listen to it so that along the way you go, oh, all